My dear friends, at my age, 82 next month, I've learned that the most profound truths often wear the plainest clothes. This story came to me through my volunteer work at Stanford Hospital, where I still read to patients every Thursday, just as I have since Reagan was president. Last October, I witnessed something that reminded me why love doesn't check bank statements or birth certificates. It was about two people my age who thought their dancing days were over. They were wrong. You see, when you've lived through the Depression as children, fought in Korea or Vietnam, raised families through the 70s inflation, and buried spouses in the new millennium, you think you know all about loss and pretense. But Walter and Eleanor taught me that sometimes we need to lie our way to the truth, especially when that truth is too frightening to face head-on. The hospital lights buzzed and flickered the way they do when the ballast needs replacing. That annoying hum that gets into your bones. Walter Harrison's Rolex, the $20,000 Daytona that Catherine had given him for their 40th anniversary, slipped off his wrist and clattered on that speckled linoleum they use in every hospital from here to Kingdom Come. At the very same moment, Eleanor Whitman's old canvas purse, the one from Woolworth's that closed in '97, tipped right off the gurney. Everything scattered. Her library card from 1987, laminated 3 times over, $3 bills folded the way her mother taught her, and a California EBT card, what they call food stamps now, though the shame feels just the same. Rodriguez, the young paramedic with tired eyes that reminded Walter of his son after night shifts in residency, held up 2 driver's licenses like he was comparing cards in a poker game. Which name goes on the form? Victoria Ashford or Eleanor Whitman? Walter's throat went dry as August dirt. He reached for that Victoria Ashford ID, the fake one Eleanor had used for their computer dating profile. Lord help us, meeting people on computers at our age. Eleanor's eyes, clouded with exhaustion but sharp as a tack suddenly, followed his hand like she was tracking a bird in flight. Eleanor Whitman, Walter said, his voice cracking like a teenage boy's. Her name is Eleanor Whitman. From the gurney, Eleanor whispered through that oxygen mask that smelled like rubber and fear. Walter Harrison. His real name is Walter Harrison, not Arthur Brennan. Rodriguez looked between them the way Walter's granddaughter looked when she caught him sneaking cookies before supper. The 2 nurses, one about 50 with kind eyes, the other young enough to be anybody's granddaughter, exchanged the kind of glance women share when men are being foolish. 7 months, Eleanor managed, her voice stronger now, fighting through whatever had laid her low. 7 months of Tuesdays. Walter dropped to his knees on that hospital floor. Didn't care one whit that his Brooks Brothers suit, the one Catherine had picked out at Nordstrom's, was now pressing against floor that smelled of pine sol and that particular hospital smell you never forget. His hand found hers. First time he'd held it without pretending to be someone else. March 20th, 2:47 in the morning, he told Rodriguez, told the nurses, told the good Lord himself if he was listening. I was trying to call Harold, my lawyer. Arthritis made my finger slip on the telephone buttons. Eleanor's heart monitor beeped steady as a metronome. Each beep marked another second of truth after all those months of elaborate stories. He was 3 sheets to the wind on Macallan's scotch, she said, managing a weak smile. Could hear it in his voice. Lonely drinking, the kind widowers do. The medical folks needed to move. Corridor is no place for treatment. But Rodriguez stood there frozen, like he was watching Perry Mason solve a case. Sir, we need to— I know her, Walter interrupted, eyes never leaving Eleanor's face. Know she reads Wuthering Heights to Mrs. Thompson every Thursday, because Mrs. Thompson's diabetes took her eyesight. No, she makes soup from scratch, even though Campbell's would be easier and cheaper. No, she hums Chopin when she thinks nobody's listening. The Nocturne in E flat, same one my mother played. Eleanor's eyes filled up like summer rain. I know him, too. No, he sleeps in his den because the master bedroom echoes with memories. No, he keeps Catherine's coffee mug on his desk, unwashed, like she might come back for one more cup of Folgers. No, he pretends to watch the Giants, but really reads poetry on that computer phone when he thinks nobody's looking. But you don't know each other's names? Rodriguez asked, bewildered as a cat in a doghouse. We knew each other's hearts, Walter said. The names were just noise. The emergency room doors whooshed open like they'd done 10,000 times before. October air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain coming, and eucalyptus trees that had been here since the gold rush. Dr. Sarah Kim approached, all business, the way doctors get when time matters. We need to move, now. As they wheeled Eleanor away, she pulled that oxygen mask down for just a heartbeat. The dog, she said to Walter. Don't forget to feed Frost. He won't eat if he thinks I'm not coming back, just like my old Chester used to do. Walter nodded, unable to speak. Frost, the 9-year-old husky mix they'd rescued together, both pretending it was for their made-up friends. That dog knew their real names from day one and loved them anyway, the way dogs do. The emergency department doors swallowed Eleanor's gurney like the whale swallowed Jonah. Walter stood in that suddenly empty corridor, his Rolex still on the floor, her food stamp card in his hand. 7 months of elaborate stories scattered around him like confetti after New Year's Eve, 1975. His phone buzzed. Samuel. Dad, where are you? The board meeting. Walter turned that phone off. First time in 40 years. The board could wait. His empire could wait. Everything could wait, except this. The woman he'd fallen in love with while pretending to be someone else, who'd done the exact same thing. Rodriguez came back with admission forms. Mr. Harrison, I need you to fill these out. Are you her emergency contact? Yes, Walter said without hesitation. Been her emergency contact since March 20th at 2:47 in the morning. Just didn't know it yet. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. The 47th floor of the Media Corps building hummed with that peculiar sound of money being made. IBM Selectrics clacking away, phones ringing like Sunday church bells, the wheeze of the pneumatic tube system that Walter insisted on keeping from 1962. He pressed his forehead against the window, leaving an oily mark on glass that cost more per square foot than most folks' houses. His corner office smelled of leather and Murphy's oil soap and something else. Loneliness has a smell. Like dust on photograph albums nobody opens anymore. Catherine's portrait watched from the credenza, oil on canvas, painted the year before the cancer showed up uninvited. The cleaning crew had orders never to dust it. 3 years of accumulated particles softened her features the way memory softens grief. The Macallan bottle on his desk, the one his daddy would have called showing off, caught the afternoon light. Amber liquid down past the label now. His hand shook. Just a tremor, the kind that comes at 72 whether from age or the third glass, or both. The crystal tumbler left wet rings on quarterly reports that might as well have been written in Chinese for all he cared anymore. His phone showed 37 messages. Samuel's name appeared 6 times. The boy who'd become a man while Walter was in Hong Kong or Tokyo or some other place that seemed important at the time. Their last real conversation had been at Catherine's funeral, discussing estate taxes between Amazing Grace and the Lord's Prayer. 14 miles east, where Oakland hadn't yet turned fancy, Eleanor Whitman's knees clicked like castanets as she pushed the mop across the library's reading room floor. That clicking had started during the Reagan years, too many hours kneeling to shelve returns, now kneeling to clean them. The industrial clock above circulation showed 2:33 a.m., running slow, as always, like time itself got tired in libraries after midnight. Mrs. Chen expected her at 7 sharp to read the Chronicle's obituaries. The old woman liked knowing who'd gone before her. Mr. Jameson at 9 for his Steinbeck. He'd been working through East of Eden for 6 months, savoring it like rationed chocolate during the war. Grace had left the stove on again yesterday. Not the burners, Eleanor had removed those knobs after the fire scare, but the oven, set to warm, door open like a mouth trying to heat the whole apartment. The gas bill would be murder. Her phone, held together with clear packing tape from her grocery delivery job, showed $47.23 in checking. Rent was due in 6 days. $900 she didn't have, and wouldn't have unless that computer dating worked out. The library's public computer still glowed, that dating website banner flashing like a Vegas sign. Her fake profile smiled back. Victoria Ashford, retired museum curator, Pacific Heights. The lies had taken 3 hours to compose, each detail borrowed from romance novels she'd reshelved over 40 years. Her finger hovered over delete account. Then she saw it. New message notification. From Arthur, retired physician. The mop handle slipped from her grip, clattering on linoleum loud enough to wake the dead. March 20th. Arthur Brennan stood in Walter's study, holding a Polaroid from the Harvard reunion, class of '76. In the photo, Walter still had his hair, that Kennedy-style sweep Catherine used to run her fingers through. Arthur's own fingers, swollen at the knuckles from 60 years of holding surgical instruments, trembled as he set up Walter's profile on something called silversingles.com. "What in Sam Hill are you doing?" Walter's voice came from the doorway, rough from the Macallan breakfast he'd been having since Catherine's funeral. Arthur didn't look up from the computer screen, one of those new flat ones that looked like something from Star Trek. "Saving your life?" "I don't need. Found you passed out at your desk yesterday. 3rd time this month." Arthur typed with 2 fingers, the way they'd learned on Underwoods in high school. "Your blood pressure's through the roof, your liver enzymes look like phone numbers, and you haven't eaten anything but scotch and crackers since Christmas." Walter moved closer, squinting at the screen. His reading glasses were somewhere. Kitchen, bathroom, who knew anymore? Arthur Brennan, retired physician? That's my profile? Nobody needs to know you own half of California's newspapers. Arthur uploaded the Harvard photo. "There, you're now a retired doctor who likes dogs and long walks." "I hate dogs. And walking." "You hate everything right now. That's the problem." Walter reached for the mouse, still called it a clicker, couldn't help it, but Arthur blocked him. 1 month. Try it 1 month. If you don't like anybody, I'll delete it myself. The screen showed matches already. Blonde women with tennis tans, redheads on sailboats, all of them listing their stock portfolios like resumes. "Gold diggers," Walter muttered. "Every last one." Then he saw her. Victoria Ashford. Simple photo, navy dress, standing in what looked like a museum. Her profile said she loved the quiet of libraries after closing time. Something in his chest shifted, like a drawer unsticking after years painted shut. Across the bay, Eleanor's hands shook as she opened Grace's bedroom door. Empty. Bed sheets twisted into ropes. Grace had been trying to escape again, thinking she was late for her shift at the cannery that closed in 1987. The phone rang. Oakland Police Department. "Ma'am, we have a Grace Sullivan here. Says she lives at 1847 Maple?" Eleanor's knees nearly buckled. "Is she hurt?" "No, ma'am. Found her at the Safeway, trying to buy groceries with ration stamps." The walk to the station took 40 minutes. The bus money had gone to Grace's heart pills. Her feet, already swollen from the night shift, screamed with each step in the naturalizers she'd bought for Tom's funeral 12 years back. Grace sat in the station's waiting room, arguing with the desk sergeant about President Eisenhower. When she saw Eleanor, her face lit up like Christmas morning. "There you are!" "I was just telling this young man about the factory dance where I met Tom." "Let's go home, Grace." But home had an eviction notice taped to the door. Yellow paper, like a caution sign. 3 months behind. The landlord's patience had run out, along with Eleanor's savings. That night, after Grace finally slept, until the Ambien kicked in, Eleanor opened her laptop, a dinosaur from 2010 that wheezed like an asthmatic cat. The dating site she'd found at the library glowed on the screen. She'd already created Victoria Ashford, everything Eleanor wasn't. Wealthy widow, museum curator, Someone who'd never cleaned toilets or counted food stamps or held her sister while she cried for a husband 40 years dead. A red notification dot appeared. New message. Arthur Brennan, 75, widower. The photo showed him at what looked like a medical conference. Name tag blurred, but visible enough to seem real. His message was simple. I saw you love libraries. My wife did too. She died 3 years ago, and I haven't been in one since. Maybe you could recommend a book to help me start again. Eleanor's fingers hovered over the keys. She could delete it all, keep her dignity, face eviction honestly. Or she could type back, become Victoria for just a few hours a week. Maybe find someone lonely enough not to ask too many questions until she figured out the money. She typed, start with something gentle, maybe Maeve Binchy. She wrote about second chances. His response came at 2:47 a.m. Can't sleep either? Sleep is for people without worries, she typed. Or people without memories, he replied. They rode until dawn painted the Oakland hills pink. About books. About the way coffee tasted different after 60. About the echo empty houses made. Neither mentioned money. Neither mentioned last names. Neither mentioned that loneliness at their age felt like dying in slow motion. 3 weeks of messages. Every night at 2:47 a.m., like clockwork, like prayer, like medicine. Finally, Arthur wrote, would you meet me? Just coffee? Somewhere public? Eleanor looked at Grace, sleeping in her chair, mouth open, looking so much like their mother at the end. Then she looked at the eviction notice, now with a court date. April 15th, she typed. Bluebird Cafe on Fillmore, 10:30 a.m. I'll be there, he wrote. Then, after a pause that showed him typing and deleting, I'm scared too. Eleanor closed the laptop. In the bedroom, she heard Grace stirring, calling for Tom. What had she just agreed to? The Bluebird Cafe's door chime played something between B-flat and B-natural. Needed tuning, like everything else on Fillmore these days. Walter's hand stuck to the brass handle, palm sweating like he was 16 at the junior prom. Through the glass, morning light pooled on scarred wooden tables like spilled honey. April 15th, 10:07 a.m. His Timex, he'd left the Rolex at home, too flashy, showed he'd arrived 23 minutes early. The Harvard reunion shirt from 2004 pulled tight across his belly. Catherine used to say he carried weight well. Catherine used to lie about kind things. The cafe smelled of burnt Maxwell House and vanilla extract from some fancy coffee drink he'd never understand. A waitress approached, purple streak in her hair like his granddaughter's, name tag reading Sage in that bubble writing young people used. Just one today? Her voice had that chirp servers used for tips. Walter's throat clicked. Actually, I'm meeting someone. Well, not meeting exactly. The words tumbled wrong. My friend Arthur, he's shy, meeting a lady from the computer thing. Online. I'm just making sure she's safe. Sage's pierced eyebrow lifted, made him think of his mother's expression when she'd caught him sneaking lucky strikes behind the garage. Like a dating background check? Something like that. She grabbed a menu, orthopedic shoes squeaking on the concrete floor somebody had painted to look fancy. Corner booth work? Good view of the entrance. The vinyl wheezed as Walter settled in, probably hadn't been reupholstered since Nixon. His fingers drummed the Formica tabletop, feeling every coffee ring burned into its surface. Phone showed 10:11. Victoria would arrive at 10:30. He'd watch, maybe say hello, report back to Arthur. Except Arthur was him, and this whole thing was already a mess of lies tangled like Christmas lights in the attic. The door chime sang again. Eleanor Whitman stood in the entrance, breathing like she'd climbed stairs. The navy dress, Goodwill, $14, tags snipped but the smell of other people's lives still clinging, scratched at her collarbone. Her feet throbbed in pumps she hadn't worn since Tom's wake, blisters already forming where the leather had stiffened with age. Sage approached, same perky bounce. "Welcome to Bluebird. Just one?" Eleanor's prepared speech dissolved like aspirin in water. "I'm early, meeting someone at 10:30, or rather, checking on someone for a friend." The words came out steadier than her hands felt. "My friend Victoria. She's meeting a gentleman from the internet." Sage's pen stopped moving. She looked between Eleanor and Walter, a smile playing at the corner of her mouth like she knew a secret. "Another checker? Popular service today." Eleanor's stomach dropped like an express elevator. "That's the exact same booth another check-arounder requested." Sage's eyes danced with mischief now. "But it's big enough for two suspicious friends." The walk to the booth felt like miles. Walter looked up from his menu, eyes the gray of morning fog over the bay, the kind of eyes that had seen things and chosen to keep looking anyway. "I'm sorry," Eleanor started, clutching her purse like a life preserver. "I think there's been—" "No problem." Walter slid over on the bench, vinyl protesting. "Plenty of room." She perched on the edge, purse in her lap, Wuthering Heights pressing through the thin fabric against her ribs, her security blanket, something to read if stood up. "You're early," Walter said. The observation hung between them like laundry on a line. "I hate being late." The truth escaped before Eleanor could catch it. She wasn't supposed to be having conversation. She was supposed to be watching. "Same." He turned his coffee mug in quarter turns, handle north, east, south, west, north again. "Your friend, the one meeting someone. Is she nervous?" Eleanor's fingers found the book's spine through her purse. "Terrified, actually. Hasn't done this since Johnson was president." "Johnson? Which one?" That sparked a laugh she tried to swallow. "Lyndon, not Andrew." "Arthur's the same. Wife passed 3 years back." "Victoria's husband, too. 5 years." They sat in expanding silence while the coffee machine hissed like an angry cat. Sage delivered water neither had ordered, ice cubes clinking like pocket change. "What time are they supposed to?" Walter began. His phone buzzed. He made a show of checking it, typing nothing to nobody. "Arthur says he's running late. Emergency at the hospital." Eleanor's phone stayed silent because Victoria didn't exist, and ghosts don't text. Her thumb moved anyway, pretending. "Victoria just got a migraine. The bright lights trigger them." They looked at each other across that scarred table. Walter's left hand still wore his wedding band, the skin beneath pale as mushrooms, protected from 40 years of sun. Eleanor noticed the callus on his thumb from holding a pen, same place as hers. "Since they're both delayed," Walter said, words careful as footsteps on ice, "maybe we could wait together? To make sure they're both safe." "Exactly." Walter waved at Sage. "Could we see breakfast menus?" "Thought you were just checking on people." "Might be a long surveillance." Eleanor laughed again, louder this time, like birds startled from a wire. Her hand flew to her mouth, embarrassed by the sound. "Don't apologize." Something in Walter's face shifted, years falling away like calendar pages. "It's a good laugh. Real." The menus arrived. Eleanor opened hers, grateful for the shield. Prices swam before her eyes. $8 for toast? Her stomach cramped, not from hunger, but from the math of poverty. "Their coffee's overpriced," Walter said, as if reading her mind. "Highway robbery. But the kitchen makes decent Eggs Benedict." "Victoria loves Eggs Benedict." The lie came smooth as butter. "Though she says most places ruin the hollandaise. Arthur's the same, particular about his hollandaise. Has to be just right, lemony but not sour." Their eyes met over the menus. The morning light through the window caught the silver threading through Eleanor's hair. Not dyed since Tom's diagnosis. Couldn't afford it. Couldn't care. "Here's an idea," Walter said, voice dropping like he was sharing state secrets. "Since our friend's on here, maybe we could practice what they might talk about." Eleanor's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Steam curled between them, A question mark made of vapor. "Practice," she repeated. "For their benefit." "Of course." She set the cup down. The clink echoed. What would Arthur want to know about Victoria? Walter leaned forward, elbows on the table, something Catherine would have corrected, but Catherine wasn't here. Everything. The word landed between them like a stone in still water. Outside, through the window, morning traffic crawled past. A Bentley, Walter's Bentley, sat in the handicapped space, no placard visible. Eleanor followed his gaze and saw it. That car cost more than she'd make in 5 lifetimes. May 2024. The pattern establishes. Tuesday, 10 a.m. The Bluebird Cafe's corner booth had worn to their shapes. The dip where Walter's elbow rested while he stirred his coffee. The smooth spot where Eleanor's purse sat like a faithful dog. 3 weeks since that first confusion, and the lie had grown its own roots. Walter arrived carrying a white pharmacy bag from Walgreens, the paper crisp as new money. Inside, Arthur's supposed heart medication. Actually, vitamin C tablets he'd transferred from the bottle in his medicine cabinet, the one Catherine used to count out every Sunday, filling that weekly organizer with days marked SMTWTFS. Eleanor's canvas tote, the library's logo faded from 20 years of washing, bulged with returns. Books she'd checked out just to maintain Victoria's wealthy reader image. Dostoevsky, the same copy she'd read to Tom during chemo. Pages soft as cloth now. Arthur had a rough night, Walter said, settling into his spot. The lie came easier now, like signing his name. Lost a patient, elderly woman, reminded him of his mother. Eleanor's hand covered his across the table. First time she'd touched him on purpose. Her skin felt tissue-thin, mapped with veins like rivers on old atlases. Victoria understands. She lost her aunt the same way. Neither Victoria nor any aunt existed, but grief was real enough. Eleanor had held plenty of hands in their last moments, back when the library still had reading programs at the senior center. Sage didn't ask anymore, just brought 2 black coffees, Folgers, nothing fancy, and wheat toast. The cheapest items on the menu, agreed upon through a kind of silent negotiation, like bidding at an auction where nobody wanted to show their limit. "I've been thinking," Walter said, watching Eleanor tear her toast into perfect squares, each piece exactly the same size. He'd catalogued this habit alongside dozens of others, how she touched her wedding ring's ghost, how she counted sugar packets before choosing one. Arthur needs to get out more, beyond coffee shops. Eleanor's jaw worked through dry toast. She'd skipped butter, extra 50 cents. Victoria mentioned the same thing. There's a shelter on Valley Boulevard. They have older dogs. The toast stuck in Eleanor's throat. She coughed, eyes watering like she'd been cutting onions. Walter half stood, but she waved him down, gulping water that tasted of city pipes. Dogs? Arthur had beagles growing up. Another lie. Walter's father had taken a 9-iron to their spaniel when it chewed his wingtips. Walter, 8 years old, had hidden in the basement, hands over his ears, but the sound still lived in his bones 40 years later. Victoria, too, Eleanor managed. She had a golden retriever named... Her mind scrambled through every dog name from every book she'd shelved. Sunshine. The name hung between them like a child's drawing on a refrigerator. Obviously fake, but precious anyway. Saturday? Walter suggested. We could scout it for them. Eleanor's fingers worked the math under the table. Saturday meant missing her Meals on Wheels route. $40 gone. But Walter's eyes held something she hadn't seen since Tom's last good day. Hope, maybe. Or just the absence of despair. 2 o'clock? They shook hands across the table, formal as a real estate deal, both pretending not to notice how their fingers lingered. Saturday arrived gray as dishwater, spitting the kind of rain that couldn't decide if it was serious. Eleanor stood at the bus stop on International Boulevard, her umbrella broken where the spoke met fabric, water dripping steady as a metronome onto her good dress. The navy one, Now her Tuesday uniform, her Saturday uniform, her only uniform that wasn't for cleaning. The 57 bus was 12 minutes late. By the time she reached Valley Boulevard, her shoes squelched with each step, stockings clinging to her legs like wet leaves. Walter's Bentley idled outside the shelter, hazard lights blinking that expensive amber color. He jumped out when he saw her, holding a golf umbrella big enough for a small wedding. "You're soaked." "Bus splash," she said, not mentioning the 6-block walk from the stop, the drainage grate that had grabbed her heel, the moment she'd stood there crying from frustration while strangers hurried past. Inside, the shelter smelled exactly like every animal shelter since time began. Wet dog and bleach, and that particular smell of hope mixed with abandonment. Dogs barked in every key, a symphony of need. Marcus, the volunteer, maybe 19, acne scars like constellations on his cheeks, led them past the kennels. His t-shirt said, "I pause for pause," in letters that had survived too many washings. "Looking for anything specific?" "Senior dogs," Walter said. I prefer older animals." Eleanor watched Walter transform at each kennel. His CEO face, the one from newspaper photos she'd seen while cleaning his building, melted away. A 3-legged pit bull made him kneel on concrete that had to be murder on 72-year-old knees. An ancient chihuahua with cataracts got a soft whistle, the kind men of his generation used to call dogs before everything became commands. The last kennel held a husky, gray-faced as a grandfather clock. One blue eye, one brown, both clouded like milk glass. He lay in the corner, chin on paws, still as furniture. "That's Frost," Marcus said. 9 years old. Family surrendered him last week, moving to one of those places that don't take pets. Frost lifted his head, studying them with the patience of a dog who'd learned not to hope. Eleanor dropped to her knees. The concrete bit through her dress, cold and unforgiving as truth. "Hello, handsome boy." Frost's tail moved once. Not a wag, just an acknowledgement. "Can we meet him?" In the visiting room, cinder blocks painted the green of hospital scrubs. Frost investigated them with the thoroughness of a detective. He sniffed Walter's Italian leather shoes, $500 at Nordstrom. Then Eleanor's purse, $15 at Ross, but she'd sewn the broken strap 3 times. The dog made no distinction between wealth and want. Eleanor's fingers found the spot behind his ears, that place every dog loves. Frost's eyes closed, a rumble starting deep in his chest, like a furnace coming to life. "Victoria would love him," she said. "Arthur, too." They looked at each other over the dog's head. The overhead bulb flickered, ballast going, same as every underfunded place. "I'll adopt him," Walter said suddenly. "For Arthur." Marcus brought paperwork. Walter's pen hovered over the address line. His Pacific Heights mansion had never housed anything that might shed, bark, or need love at inconvenient hours. He wrote Arthur's fictional address, then crossed it out, wrote his real one. The pen slipped, ink smearing. Eleanor watched confusion play across his face like weather. "You could say Arthur's staying with you temporarily." "Right, yes, of course." Frost leaned against Eleanor's leg, leaving white and gray fur on her navy dress. She didn't brush it off. Some things were worth keeping. June 2024. Deeper deception. Eleanor counted bills under the kitchen table's bad fluorescent, the circular kind that hummed like trapped wasps. $17, $18, $19. Coffee and toast twice a week was bleeding her dry, even with Sage slipping her free refills when the manager wasn't looking. Grace wandered in, nightgown inside out, toothpaste dried white at the corners of her mouth like punctuation marks. "Where's my husband?" "Tom died 6 years ago, Grace." The response had become automatic as breathing. "Liar!" Grace's voice pitched high, scared as a child at a thunderstorm. "He was just here, dancing. We were doing the Lindy Hop." Eleanor stood, knees popping like bubble wrap. 4 a.m. was her new normal. earlier than before to make up for Tuesdays and Saturdays lost to Walter. She guided Grace back to bed, the path worn into the carpet from nightly wanderings like deer trails through woods. "Tom's waiting for you in dreams," Eleanor whispered, the lie that brought peace. Grace settled, fingers clutching Eleanor's wrist hard enough to leave marks. "The Tuesday man makes you smile." Eleanor's breath caught. What Tuesday man? But Grace's eyes had already gone vacant, sliding somewhere Eleanor couldn't follow. That fog place where memories went to die. Tuesday arrived with unusual heat for June, the kind that made old folks stay indoors. Eleanor found Walter at their table, but something was off. Dark circles bruised under his eyes like newsprint smudges. His coffee sat untouched, skin forming on top like ice on a pond. "Arthur okay?" she asked. "Patient with Alzheimer's. Family can't afford the new trial at Stanford." His hand rubbed across stubble he'd missed shaving. 50,000 just to start. The number hung between them like a noose. Eleanor's annual income twice over, with change. That's... She stopped. Victoria would find it reasonable. Eleanor found it impossible, like saying the moon cost $50,000. "Arthur wants to help," Walter continued. "But medical ethics, boundaries. He can't just give them money." "No," Eleanor agreed, thinking of her own empty refrigerator, Grace's medications she'd been splitting to make them last. "He can't." Walter's eyes fixed on something past her shoulder. Maybe the wall, maybe the future, maybe nothing. "Sometimes I think, Arthur thinks, money's just paper. Worthless unless it helps someone." Eleanor's throat burned like she'd swallowed battery acid. "Victoria says the same." They sat in the expanding silence. Sage refilled their cups without asking. The coffee they wouldn't drink. The ritual of normal people with normal problems. Not the kind that involved choosing between heart medicine and rent. "I should go," Eleanor said. "Victoria's having the kitchen redone. Contractors need supervision." Another lie. The kitchen hadn't been touched since Bush Sr. was president. Cabinet doors held closed with duct tape. Linoleum bubbling up like blisters. The stove that only worked on 3 burners if you jiggled the knobs just right. Outside, Walter watched her wait for the bus. He almost offered a ride. The words formed, lived, died before they reached air. Arthur's friend wouldn't need a ride. Arthur's friend had a driver, probably, or at least a car that started in the rain. That night, an envelope appeared under Eleanor's door. No name, no note. Inside, $50,000 in worn hundreds, the kind banks gave when you closed accounts, not the crisp bills from ATMs. Eleanor sat on the kitchen floor, bills spread like tarot cards. Reading a future she couldn't accept, couldn't refuse, couldn't understand. Grace shuffled in, drawn by the kitchen light. "What's that?" "I don't know. The Tuesday man?" Eleanor gathered the bills with shaking hands, like collecting autumn leaves that might blow away. "No, he wouldn't. We're checking on people for friends." Grace laughed, high and clear, a sound from before the fog, before Tom died, before everything went sideways. "Oh, honey, you are the friends." The truth hit Eleanor like cold water from a broken pipe. Every Tuesday, every careful lie about Victoria and Arthur. They'd been describing themselves, just dressed in better clothes, living in better houses, dying more gracefully. The clinical trial office at Stanford smelled like hope and hand sanitizer. Eleanor filled out forms while Grace sat beside her, having one of her clear mornings, the kind that came less and less, like letters from a friend moving away. "Full payment up front," the administrator said, barely looking up from her computer screen. $50,000 covers the first 6 months. Eleanor pushed the envelope across the desk. The woman's eyes widened at the cash, counting it twice, then again. "This is unusual." "My husband left insurance," Eleanor lied. "It finally came through." They accepted it. They always accepted cash, no matter how unusual. Money didn't care where it came from. Grace started the treatment the following Monday. By Thursday, she remembered Eleanor's name 3 times in a row. Called her Eleanor, not Mary, their mother, or Susan, their sister who died in '73, or that woman who lives here. July 2024. The close calls. "You fancy friends here again," Mr. Chen said from next door, watering petunias that had seen better decades. He'd lived there since the Eisenhower administration, knew everybody's business like a newspaper he'd memorized. Eleanor's key stuck in the lock. Humidity had swollen the wood again. "What friend?" "Bentley. Parks down the block every Tuesday afternoon. Walks by real slow, like he's casing the joint." Her blood turned to ice water in July heat. Walter knew where she lived. How? When? The careful architecture of lies felt suddenly like a house of cards in a windstorm. Inside, Grace sat watching television, the news channel Walter's empire owned, his face occasionally flashing on screen during business segments. "Turn that off." "Why? I like the afternoon man. Reminds me of that Tuesday fellow who—" Eleanor grabbed the remote, clicked it off hard enough to hear the plastic crack. Her heart hammered against ribs that suddenly felt too small. On the coffee table, the receipt from Grace's treatment, the letterhead clear as newspaper headlines. Stanford Neurology Clinical Trials. The same hospital where Arthur supposedly worked. She pulled out her phone, started to text Walter. Stopped. Victoria wouldn't panic. Victoria had investments, connections, a nephew on the hospital board. Victoria wasn't afraid of anything except being alone. Thursday came, and Walter didn't appear at their usual coffee shop. Neither did Arthur, of course, because Walter was Arthur in an endless loop of deception. Eleanor sat alone at their booth, the empty space across from her loud as accusation. Sage brought 1 coffee, 1 toast. Didn't meet her eyes. Saturday, the shelter. Walter stood outside Frost's kennel. The dog lived here now, officially Walter's, but boarding until his house was ready. Truth was, he'd hired contractors to dog-proof the mansion. Removing white carpets Catherine had chosen, installing gates, moving Ming vases she'd inherited to heights no tail could reach. "You back," Marcus said. "Frost gets excited when he smells your cologne." "I don't wear cologne." "Whatever soap then. That expensive stuff. He knows." Frost pressed against the chain link, tail wagging hard enough to shake his whole back end. Walter's chest tightened. When had anything been this happy to see him? Samuel barely nodded when they passed in hallways. The board members performed enthusiasm like trained seals, all for show. "Can I walk him?" "Your friend usually does that." Walter's hand froze on the leash. "What friend?" "The lady." "Eleanor? Comes Wednesdays and Fridays. Said she's friends with the new owner." The world tilted like a boat in a storm. Eleanor came here. Eleanor knew about Frost. Eleanor knew he was Arthur, or at least knew Arthur was connected to Walter, who owned a Bentley and visited her street, and— "You okay, Mr. Harrison?" Walter looked up sharp. He'd given Arthur's name on the adoption papers. Marcus smiled. "Sorry, Mr. Brennan. You just look like that media guy. Harrison. You know, the one who owns everything." "People say that." He walked Frost around the block, the dog pulling toward every smell, garbage cans, fire hydrants, that invisible history dogs read like newspapers. His phone rang. Samuel. "Dad, where are you? The Beijing deal—" "Not now." "It's Saturday. They're waiting." "Let them wait." He hung up. Frost looked back, concerned by the harsh tone, tail dropping. "Not you, boy. Never you." The dog's tongue lolled out, happy again. Simple as that. No board meetings, no hostile takeovers, no 40-year marriage that had become a business merger. Just walking and sniffing and the occasional treat. Back at the shelter, Eleanor's bus was pulling away. Walter caught a glimpse. Navy dress, hair pinned up the way women of their generation did, with bobby pins that left marks on pillows. He almost ran after it, Frost barking excitement at the potential chase. "She's good with him," Marcus said. "Has that way, you know, like she speaks dog." "Yes." "You should bring them together sometime, officially." Walter nodded, unable to speak. The elaborate construction of lies suddenly felt less like protection and more like those Chinese finger traps his grandson played with. The harder you pulled, the tighter they held. That night, he pulled Eleanor's employment file from MediaCore's archives. The computer took forever, some old database nobody had updated since Y2K. Her photo finally loaded. 20 years younger, but the same kind eyes, the same way of holding her head like she was listening to music nobody else could hear. Terminated in the 2008 reduction. His signature on the form, one of 3,000 he'd signed that week. He remembered Catherine bringing him coffee, saying he looked tired. He remembered being annoyed at the interruption. He didn't remember Eleanor Whitman becoming nobody with a pen stroke. The next Tuesday she arrived in the same navy dress, but now he saw what he'd been blind to. The careful mending at the hem where she'd let it down. The way she counted coins before ordering. The pause before settling on toast, always toast. The cheapest thing that still counted as breakfast. "Victoria had a good week," she said carefully. "Her friend's sister started a new treatment. Seems to be helping." Walter's coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. Stanford's trial. The 50,000. She was telling him without telling him. "That's wonderful," he managed. "Arthur would be pleased." Would he? Their eyes met across the table. The air between them crackled like static before a storm. They were one word away from truth, one confession from collapse, one honest moment from destroying everything. Eleanor's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, face draining, white as paper. "I have to go." "Is everything—" "Victoria's friend. Emergency." She stood, knocking over her water glass. Ice scattered across the table like diamonds. "I'm sorry, She ran from the coffee shop, no pretense of Victoria's dignity, just Eleanor running like her life depended on it. Walter threw 2 20s on the table and followed. In the parking lot, Eleanor stood at the bus stop, shoulders shaking. Not crying, she was past tears, just shaking like leaves before a storm. He pulled up in the Bentley. "Get in." "I can't. Victoria wouldn't." "Get in the car, Eleanor." She froze at her real name. The moment stretched like taffy, sweet and terrible, and about to break. Then she yanked open the door, collapsed into leather that cost more than her annual rent. "Oakside Memorial," she gasped. "Please, please." He drove without speaking, running red lights with the casual authority of someone who could afford any ticket. Eleanor's phone rang and rang. She didn't answer. At the hospital, she was out before he'd fully stopped. "Eleanor." She turned back, mascara running in black rivers. "Thank you, Walter." Then she was gone, running toward emergency room doors that had swallowed so many hopes. Inside the car, her phone lay forgotten on the seat. The screen still showed the last message. "Grace fell. Won't wake up. Come now." Walter stared at the phone, then at the hospital where Eleanor had disappeared. Grace, the friend's sister, the Alzheimer's patient. Not a friend's sister at all. Eleanor's sister. Samuel Harrison's private investigator slid the manila folder across the conference table on MediaCore's 32nd floor. The July sun beat through windows that didn't open, sealed since that jumper in '87, turning the room into a greenhouse. Hutchins, the investigator, had the look of every ex-cop since Dragnet. Tired eyes, coffee breath, suit from J.C. Penney that had seen better presidencies. "Eleanor Whitman," Hutchins said, tapping the folder with a finger that had yellow nicotine stains between the knuckles. "Not Victoria Ashford." Samuel opened the folder. Photos spilled out like accusations. Eleanor at bus stops. Eleanor entering a building with bars on the windows. Eleanor in a night cleaner's uniform pushing a cart through MediaCorp's own lobby at 3 a.m. His father's supposed wealthy widow mopping their floors. You're certain? Victoria Ashford doesn't exist. Never did. No marriage records in California, Nevada, or Oregon. No death certificate for any Mr. Ashford in the last decade. No property records in Pacific Heights. Hutchins pulled out a photocopied check from California Community Credit Union. She's got $87.14 to her name. Samuel's jaw muscle ticked, the same tell his father had when angry, inherited like male-pattern baldness and high blood pressure. What else? Employed by MediaCorp from 1998 to 2008, terminated in the November reduction. Hutchins slid another paper across. Your father's signature on the pink slip. The air conditioning kicked on with a wheeze. Samuel studied the photo of Eleanor helping an elderly woman up concrete steps. The woman's face was turned away, but her hand gripped Eleanor's arm with the desperation of someone drowning in their own mind. The sister? Grace Sullivan. Early-stage dementia, recently progressed. Just enrolled in Stanford's new trial. Hutchins pulled out a receipt. Paid cash, $50,000. Same amount your father withdrew from his personal account last month. Samuel's phone vibrated against the glass table. Walter calling. He declined it, letting it go to the voicemail he never checked. There's more. Hutchins produced a final photo. Walter entering Eleanor's building, carrying a Whole Foods bag. Tuesday, 3 p.m., 2 hours after their regular coffee meeting. Samuel stood, chair rolling back to hit the window. Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. The investigator left, orthopedic shoes squeaking on marble floors. Samuel stood alone with evidence spread across the table like tarot cards predicting disaster. Outside, San Francisco baked in unusual heat. Climate change, the scientists said, though his father still called it weather. His father was somewhere down there, being conned by a woman who'd already cost him $50,000. A woman who cleaned their toilets. Samuel grabbed his keys to the Tesla, his one nod to modernity in a company that still used fax machines. Walter stood outside Eleanor's apartment door, 4B, the brass numbers green with age. The hallway reeked of curry from 4A and something medicinal, maybe Vicks, maybe death, from 4C. The fluorescent tube above him flickered like it was sending Morse code to God. The Whole Foods bag pulled at his left arm, Manchego cheese that cost $30 a pound, olives imported from Spain, crackers Catherine used to serve when they still entertained, back when they still liked each other enough to pretend for company. He raised his hand to knock, then stopped. Through the thin door, hollow core wouldn't stop a determined chihuahua, he heard Eleanor's voice. Told you, Grace, he's just someone from the coffee shop. Nobody special. The Tuesday man is on TV. Grace's voice, high and confused like a child's. That's not him. Different person. No, same eyes, same voice. The money man. The one who fires people. Look. Walter's blood turned to slush in his veins. The bag slipped from his hand. Glass shattered. The olives, probably. Oil already seeping through the brown paper like shame. Footsteps inside. The chain lock rattled. The door opened 6 inches, held by a chain that wouldn't stop anyone determined. Eleanor's eye appeared in the gap, brown as coffee grounds. It widened. Walter. You know. His voice came out strangled, like someone had hands around his throat. You've known all along. The chain rattled off. The door swung wide. Eleanor stood in a house dress from another era, faded flowers on cotton worn thin as tissue paper. Her feet were bare, toenails unpainted, a corn on her left pinky toe. Behind her, the apartment revealed itself. Water stains on the ceiling spreading like cancer. Duct tape holding cabinet doors. Grace on a couch that sagged in the middle, watching Walter's own news channel where his corporate headshot filled the screen during a business update. That's him! Grace pointed at the television with a hand that shook from medication or disease or both. The Tuesday man, Eleanor's special friend. Eleanor's shoulders dropped like someone had cut her strings. "Come in." Walter stepped over the broken jar, oil spreading across the threshold like the Red Sea parting. Except this miracle was backwards, keeping them together instead of apart. The apartment smelled of Campbell's soup, tomato from a can, not the $30 bisque from Dean and DeLuca he'd brought. Bengay, that particular smell of old carpet that's absorbed too many years of life.
"How long have you known?" he asked.
"Third coffee." Eleanor moved to the kitchen, started filling a kettle from a tap that dripped even when closed. "Your voice. You quoted MediaCorp's quarterly report, but said it was about Arthur's hospital budget. And you kept meeting me?" "You kept meeting me." She lit the gas stove with a match, the igniter broken, probably had been for years. Blue flame whooshed to life. "Why?" "I didn't know you weren't Victoria." "When did you figure it out?" Walter pulled Eleanor's employment file from his jacket. He'd been carrying it for days like evidence of his own crime. Her ID photo stared up from the counter, young and hopeful, and about to be destroyed by his signature. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, fingers splayed like she was trying to hold in words or vomit or screams. "You investigated me?" "You lied to me." "You lied first."
Arthur Brennan,
"The retired doctor? That was, what, different? Because you're rich?" Eleanor's voice cracked and climbed like a teenaged boy's. "You think I wanted to pretend? You think I enjoy being Victoria Ashford with her perfect life and dead husband who left her millions? Then why? Because nobody wants Eleanor Whitman." The words exploded out like water from a broken dam. 68 years old, broke, exhausted, cleaning offices at 3 a.m., caring for a sister who doesn't remember my name half the time. Grace looked up from the television, eyes focusing for a moment. "Eleanor?" "Yes, Grace, I'm Eleanor." "Good. I thought you were that other one. The Tuesday lady with the fancy clothes?" Walter's chest burned like he'd swallowed acid. "The 50,000 for Grace's treatment." "I didn't ask for it." "But you took it." "Yes." Eleanor turned off the gas, kettle not yet whistling. Probably never would. "I took it. For her. And I'd take it again." "From someone you were deceiving." "Someone who was deceiving me." They stood across the narrow kitchen, maybe 6 feet of cracked linoleum between them, breathing hard, like they'd run up all 4 flights instead of taking the stairs that groaned with every step. Walter's phone rang. Samuel. He ignored it. "I care about you," Walter said. "Not Victoria. You. The way you tear toast into perfect squares. How you hum Chopin when you think I'm not listening. The nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9, number 2. That laugh that sounds like birds taking off. Don't." "Why?" "Because Walter Harrison doesn't fall for Eleanor Whitman. That's not how the world works. Rich men don't love poor women except in movies from the 50s. What if—" The door exploded inward, hitting the wall hard enough to leave a mark. Samuel stood in the doorway, face red as his Tesla in the parking lot, the investigator's folder clutched in his hand like a weapon. "Get away from him." Samuel grabbed Eleanor's arm, yanking her back hard enough that she stumbled. "I know what you're doing." "Samuel," Walter started. "She's conning you, Dad. Look." Photos scattered across the floor like dead leaves. Eleanor at bus stops. Eleanor in uniform. Eleanor entering the food bank on Jefferson. She's nobody. A fired employee playing dress-up. Eleanor wrenched free, rubbing her arm where red marks were already forming. "Get out of my home." "Your home?" Samuel laughed, the ugly sound that comes from country clubs and boardrooms. "This dump? You clean my father's toilets. You're nothing but a gold digger who—" The crack of Walter's palm across Samuel's face echoed in the small space like a gunshot. Samuel stumbled back, hand to his cheek, eyes wide as a child's who just learned Santa wasn't real. "Apologize." "Dad." "Apologize to Eleanor." You hit me. For her. This nobody. Get out. Samuel backed toward the door, folder clutched against his chest like armor. When she bleeds you dry, don't call me. He slammed the door hard enough that plaster dust drifted down from the ceiling like snow in July. In the silence that followed, Grace's voice drifted from the living room, clear as a bell for once. The Tuesday man hit someone, just like my Tom used to hit me before Eleanor saved me. Eleanor's face went white as paper. She looked at Walter, then at Grace, then back at Walter, and he saw himself through her eyes. Just another man who solved problems with his fists, like every man who disappointed her, hurt her, left her. Get out, she whispered. Eleanor, you hit your son, in my home. He was insulting you. So you hit him. That's your solution? Walter reached for her. She stepped back, arms wrapped around herself like armor made of skin and bones. We're done. Whatever this was, it's over. Eleanor, please. I said, get out! Walter stood frozen. Grace had turned back to the television, already forgetting that mercy of dementia. Eleanor stood by the stove, shoulders shaking, crying without sound, the way people learn to cry when they can't afford to be heard. I love you, he said. She looked up, mascara running in black rivers down cheeks that had seen too many tears. No. Walter Harrison loves Victoria Ashford, and she doesn't exist. You're wrong. Am I? Then tell me, would you have looked twice at Eleanor Whitman, the real one, the one who cleans your offices? He had no answer that wouldn't be a lie. The door clicked shut between them. In the hallway, Walter heard Grace's voice through the thin walls. Where did the Tuesday man go? And Eleanor's response, broken as dropped china. He was never really here. August 3rd. Eleanor's fingers cramped around the pen, joints swollen from scrubbing floors at 3 different buildings last night. The check from Stanford, $43,000 returned, treatment discontinued due to adverse reactions, lay on her kitchen table next to the eviction notice. Yellow paper, like caution tape at crime scenes. She signed the endorsement line, hand leaving damp prints on paper that smelled of laser printer toner and finality. The bank teller at First National, a girl maybe 22 with nail art Eleanor couldn't afford to look at, counted twice. You want to close the clinical trial account? Yes. Cash? Cashier's check. Eleanor's voice came out scratched, like a record played too many times. To MediaCore Industries. The teller's eyebrows lifted, plucked thin as wire, but she processed the transaction. Banks never asked why. Money moved where money wanted. No questions, no judgment. Just forms to fill out in triplicate. Outside, August heat pressed down like a flat iron. The bus was 17 minutes late. She'd counted, watching the digital clock on the bank flash numbers that meant nothing except time she didn't have. When the 57 finally wheezed up, the air conditioning was broken. She stood, gripping the overhead rail that had been touched by thousands of hands, sweat pooling where her dress met her spine. A boy, maybe 16, with his mother's eyes and his father's acne, offered his seat. She almost refused. Pride was free, but her knees buckled slightly, that little betrayal of age. She sat. The MediaCore building lobby smelled of marble polish and that particular recycled air that rich buildings breathed. Rodriguez, the security guard who used to compliment her work, "You make these floors shine, Mrs. W," didn't recognize her without the night cleaner's uniform. I need to leave something for Mr. Harrison. Deliveries go through receiving. It's personal. Rodriguez's hand moved to his radio. That gesture security guards learn in week 1 of training. Ma'am, you'll need to tell him Eleanor Whitman has his money. Something shifted in Rodriguez's face. He made the call, listened to whoever answered, nodded like they could see him through the phone. 32nd floor, executive elevator. The elevator rose through layers of money and power. her ears popping at floor 20 like ascending in an unpressurized plane. Her reflection in the brass doors showed what 43 days without proper sleep produced. Skin gray as dishwater, tremor in her hands that wouldn't stop, that particular hollow around the eyes that meant the body was eating itself. Samuel waited when the doors opened. His left eye still showed yellow-green from Walter's slap, like a mood ring showing sick. Ms. Whitman. She held out the envelope, arm shaking slightly. Exhaustion or hunger or both. 43,000. What's left? Keep it. I don't want your money. It's not mine. It's his. Samuel didn't take the envelope, hands staying in pockets of pants that cost more than her monthly rent. He's in the corner office. Drunk, probably. Eleanor walked past him, orthopedic shoes silent on carpet thick as mattresses. The hallway stretched like a tunnel, abstract art on the walls that looked like nothing and cost everything. Through glass doors, she saw Walter at his desk, head in hands, shoulders shaking slightly. Crying or laughing or just breathing, she couldn't tell. She knocked. He looked up, eyes red as traffic lights, 3 days of stubble making him look homeless, despite the Armani suit. Eleanor. She placed the check on his desk, between scattered reports and an empty glass that had held something amber and expensive. Your money. I don't want. Neither do I. He stood, swayed like a boat in wake. His shirt was untucked on one side, tie gone, collar stained with what might have been coffee, or whiskey, or tears. How's Grace? Not your concern. The treatment. Ended. She didn't qualify for continued enrollment. Seizure risk too high. The words came out flat, like reading a grocery list. Walter moved around the desk, unsteady as a newborn colt. Eleanor stepped back, maintaining distance like he was contagious. Let me help. No. Pride won't pay for her care. Pride is all I have left. Her voice cracked on left, the word breaking in half. Eleanor, Victoria would have taken your money. Eleanor won't. She turned to leave. Walter's hand caught her wrist, gentle but desperate, his palm fever-hot and damp as raw meat. I miss you. Eleanor pulled free. You miss someone who doesn't exist. That's not Tuesday coffees? That wasn't me. That was Victoria. The woman who could afford $8 toast and had time for shelter visits. She laughed, the sound like glass breaking. Eleanor works 18-hour days and counts pennies for bus fare. Eleanor doesn't have time to miss anyone. I know who you are. Do you? Because I don't. Not anymore. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, San Francisco spread out like a circuit board. Each light a life, each life a story. Most of them invisible from this height. Frost won't eat, Walter said quietly. Eleanor's composure cracked like ice in warm water. What? The dog. He won't eat. Marcus says he just lies there, waiting. That's not my... He loves you. He loves someone who pretended to have time for him. Walter sank back into his chair, leather creaking like old bones. He reached for the decanter, Waterford crystal Catherine had inherited from her mother. His hand shook badly enough that crystal rang against crystal like a wind chime. Don't, Eleanor said. Why do you care? I don't. She left him pouring 3 fingers of Macallan into a glass that had held the same amount an hour ago, and an hour before that, the endless mathematics of drowning. The eviction notice had gained a red stamp. Final warning, 7 days to vacate. Eleanor sat at her kitchen table, Grace's medications lined up like soldiers about to be executed. Without the trial, they'd returned to generic prescriptions, the kind that worked sometimes, maybe, if you believed hard enough. The calculator's buttons stuck from age and spilled coffee. She pressed harder. Rent, $900. Medications, $1,200. Food, $200 if they ate rice and beans. Utilities, $150 if she kept the lights off. Income from 3 jobs. $1,700 if she didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't stop moving. The math had never worked. It didn't work now. It wouldn't work tomorrow. Eleanor? Grace stood in the doorway, nightgown inside out and backwards, toothpaste dried in her gray hair. Where's Tom? He died, Grace. 6 years ago. Remember? The cancer? You're lying. He was just here. We were dancing. The Moonlight Serenade, Glenn Miller. Eleanor rose, knees popping like firecrackers. 4 hours of sleep in the last 2 days, maybe 3. Time had become elastic, stretching and compressing like silly putty. Her vision swam, dark spots floating like oil on water. Let's get you back to bed. I don't want to go to bed. I want Tom. I want my husband. Grace. Grace's hand struck out, wild and uncoordinated, catching Eleanor across the cheek. Not hard. Grace had no strength left, but the shock sent Eleanor stumbling. Her hip caught the table corner, the medication bottles scattered, rolling across cracked linoleum, under the refrigerator that had wheezed since Clinton, behind the stove that only worked on 2 burners now. Grace, no! But her sister had already forgotten, wandering back toward her room, humming something that might have been As Time Goes By, or might have been nothing, just neurons firing randomly in a brain being eaten by its own proteins. Eleanor dropped to her knees, feeling under appliances for pills that cost more than she made in a day. Her fingers found dust thick as carpet, a dead cockroach, 3 of Grace's heart medications. The 4th had rolled to the open window. They'd jimmied it open for air since the landlord hadn't fixed the AC since Bush 1. Eleanor lunged for it, but exhaustion made her depth perception unreliable. The bottle tumbled through, falling 4 stories to shatter on concrete below. 30 pills, $300. Gone. She sat on the floor, back against the wall that had water stains spreading like maps of nowhere. She tried to cry. Nothing came. Her tear ducts had given up, gone on strike like everything else in her body. Walter's housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, no relation to the neighbors, just that common name that made every Chinese woman in San Francisco relatives by assumption, found him passed out at his desk on August 15th. The morning board meeting had started without him. Samuel had already begun the competency proceedings, papers filed, lawyers retained, the machinery of corporate takeover grinding forward. Mr. Harrison? She shook his shoulder gently. Sir? He surfaced like something dredged from the bay, gasping, disoriented. The office reeked of scotch and the particular smell of a body processing alcohol, sweet and sick, like fruit rotting. What day? Thursday, sir. No. Date. August 15th. He'd lost 3 days. The last clear memory was Eleanor returning the money. After that, just fragments. The board's ultimatum delivered by men in suits identical to his own, Samuel's lawyers with papers to sign, Frost's empty food bowl at the shelter. Frost, is he? At the shelter still, sir. You had Marcus take him back yesterday. No memory of that. His hands shook as he tried to button his shirt, fingers too thick or buttons too small. Mrs. Chen helped, her fingers steady and impersonal as a nurse's. You need to eat something. Later. Sir, I said later. She left, orthopedic shoes silent on carpet that had cost more per square foot than most people's houses. Walter found his phone, scrolled to Eleanor's number. His thumb hovered over the call button. He'd already left 12 voicemails, each more desperate, more slurred, more pathetic than the last. The 13th would change nothing. His computer showed the board's email. Emergency meeting. Competency evaluation required. Samuel Harrison nominated as acting CEO. Through his window, fog swallowed the Golden Gate like the earth eating its own monuments. Somewhere across the bay, Eleanor was working her night shift, cleaning his building while he sat 47 floors above, turning into his father. The man who died alone in this same office, bottle in hand, empire intact, life a wasteland. He opened the Macallan. Empty. The backup bottle sat in Catherine's china cabinet, behind Waterford crystal she'd registered for at Gump's when they were young and thought expensive things meant happiness. His phone rang. Marcus from the shelter. "Mr. Harrison, it's about Frost. You need to come. Now." Arthur Brennan's Lincoln Town Car, 1995, powder blue, odometer turned over twice, idled outside Walter's Pacific Heights mansion. September 3rd, 7 a.m. The marine layer hung thick as cotton batting, muffling the world. Arthur sat behind the wheel, fingers drumming against a cardboard box that had lived in his closet since Catherine's funeral. Her handwriting across the lid in that perfect Palmer method they'd learned in school. "For Walter, when he's ready." 3 years, 4 months, 16 days. Ready had never come, until now. The front gate hung open, security company discontinued, guards let go, or maybe just Walter forgetting to close things. Arthur drove through, tires crunching on the circular driveway's gravel that nobody raked anymore. The fountain had gone dry, bottom covered in leaves from last autumn. Walter answered the door in pajama bottoms and a Harvard t-shirt with holes at the collar where he'd worried the fabric. Barefoot on marble that September had turned cold. His breath carried that medicinal sweetness of Listerine, trying to cover yesterday's scotch. Maybe today's breakfast. "Arthur, you look like death warmed over. Feel worse." Arthur pushed past him into the foyer. Newspapers stacked by the door, some still in plastic. Mail scattered across the floor like someone had thrown confetti and walked away. The grandfather clock, Catherine's grandmother's from Leipzig, had stopped at 2:47. "Where's Mrs. Chen?" "Gone. Quit, or fired. Can't remember which." They walked to Walter's study. Books, pulled from shelves, lay spine up on the Persian rug Catherine had bought in Istanbul on their 20th anniversary. The portrait of her, oil on canvas, painted during the good years, faced the wall. Arthur set the box on the desk, pushing aside empty bottles that clinked like wind chimes. Crystal, all of them. Even rock bottom had its standards. "She made me promise to wait," Arthur said, settling into the leather chair that had witnessed 40 years of deals, divorces, deaths. "Until you'd found someone." "Found someone?" Walter laughed, the sound like gravel in a disposal. "I found a liar." "You found Eleanor." Walter's hand stopped reaching for whatever bottle might still have something in it. "What do you know about Eleanor?" Arthur opened the box. Inside, leather journals, maybe 24, dated from 1975 to 2019. Catherine's diary, the kind nobody kept anymore, everything in phones now, deleted when inconvenient. Everything. Walter's legs gave out. He sank into his desk chair, springs protesting. Arthur opened a journal from 2019, Catherine's final year. Her handwriting had gone shaky by then, morphine making everything soft-focused. September 15th, Arthur read, adjusting his trifocals. "The librarian came again today. Eleanor. She reads to Mrs. Thompson in the cancer ward. Such patience. She tears her toast into perfect squares, just like Walter. I wonder if they'd recognize themselves in each other." Walter's throat closed like someone had a hand around it. October 2nd, Arthur continued. "Eleanor lost her job at MediaCorp today. Budget cuts, they said." Walter signed the papers without looking. 3,000 people gone with his pen. He doesn't know one of them reads Yeats to strangers dying alone. Doesn't know she hums Chopin when she's nervous. The same nocturne his mother played. Stop. November 18th. I'll die without Walter knowing real love. He loved me like an acquisition. Due diligence done, papers signed, merger complete. Eleanor's nothing anyone would acquire. That's why she's perfect. He'll have to see her, not her qualifications. Arthur set down that journal, picked up the last one. Catherine's final entries, written when the cancer had moved to her brain, when words came hard. December 1st. Asked Arthur to help. After. Walter will need someone who knows loss. Eleanor Whitman. Lost husband to cancer. Lost job to Walter's signature. Lost everything but didn't break. She still reads to strangers. Still tears toast. Still believes love exists. Walter needs to believe again. Walter grabbed the journal, eyes scanning the final entry, 3 days before Catherine died. Walter will recognize her by her laugh, surprised that joy still exists.
He'll love her perfect squares and Tuesday punctuality and humming when nervous. She'll love his terrible coffee addiction and hidden poetry and wearing his father's watch, though he hated him. They'll lie, because truth is terrifying. But love doesn't care about truth. It cares about recognition. They'll recognize each other. My last gift? Someone who doesn't need his money, just his broken heart. The journal slipped from Walter's hands, landing open on a page stained with what might have been tears, or medicine, or both. You knew, Walter said to Arthur. You knew who Eleanor was. I knew who Catherine wanted her to be, for you. So you made the dating profile. 10 profiles on 10 different sites. Arthur pulled out his phone, that new iPhone his grandkids had taught him to use. Different photos, different names. Eleanor only responded to one, the one mentioning you'd lost your wife to cancer. Grief recognizes grief, even through computer screens. This was planned 3 years ago? By Catherine. She knew Eleanor would need time. Tom had just died. Knew you'd need time to hit bottom. Knew you'd both be ready around now. Ready? Walter stood, swayed, caught himself on the desk. I'm being removed as CEO. Eleanor's being evicted. Her sister is dying. We're not ready for anything. You're ready for truth. Arthur pulled another paper from the box. Media Corps letterhead, the 2008 termination list. 3,000 names in tiny print. But beside Eleanor's, in pencil, someone had written, No, keep her. She's special. C. Anonymous groceries when Tom was sick. His hospice care paid through St. Mary's Fund. She couldn't save Eleanor's job, but she tried to save Eleanor. Why didn't she tell me? When would you have listened? You were in Shanghai that month, then London, then that newspaper chain in Texas. Walter sank back into the chair, head in hands. Through the window, a delivery truck rumbled past. Normal life, continuing without him. It's too late. Eleanor won't even. Walter's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then did. Mr. Harrison? This is St. Mary's Hospital. You're listed as Eleanor Whitman's emergency contact? The room tilted. Is she? She collapsed at work. Exhaustion, dehydration, malnutrition. We need you here. Grace Sullivan sat in the hospital waiting room, having one of those clear mornings that came sometimes, like sun through fog. The medication adjustment, generic now but still working, had given her maybe an hour of herself. She watched Walter pace, his shoes, Italian leather, probably Ferragamo, squeaking on waxed linoleum. You're the Tuesday man, she said. He stopped pacing. Yes. You love my sister. Yes. Good. Grace pulled a worn envelope from her purse, the fake Kate Spade Eleanor had bought her at Ross, trying to maintain dignity. Tom wrote this, before he died, for whoever loved Eleanor after. Walter's hands shook as he opened it. Tom's handwriting, that careful, cursive men of his generation learned. She'll push you away when scared. The toast squares started when our daughter Victoria died at 3. Communion wafers reminded her, so she tears bread to avoid the memory. She hums Chopin when anxious, because her mother hummed it during the Depression, said it made poverty bearable. She'll pretend she doesn't need you. Our daughter's death, then my cancer. She thinks love means loss. Prove her wrong. Walter looked up. Grace's eyes had cleared completely, looking right at him, right through him. How is she? Exhausted, dehydrated, malnourished. The doctor consulted his tablet. When did she last eat a real meal? I don't know. When did she last sleep more than 4 hours? I don't know. The doctor's expression shifted from professional to human. You're her emergency contact, but don't know. I know she tears her toast. Walter interrupted, voice breaking. No, she hums Chopin. No, she loves her sister more than herself. No, she's too proud to take help and too tired to keep refusing. I know everything that matters and nothing that helps. The doctor's expression softened. Room 314. She's asking for someone named Victoria? Grace laughed, sudden and clear as a bell. That's her. She's asking for herself, who she wanted to be. Walter started toward the elevator, then stopped, turned back to Grace.
What was your daughter's name, the one who died? Grace's eyes filled. Victoria. Eleanor named her fake self after the daughter she lost, the one she never talks about.
The elevator doors opened. Walter stepped in, journal in one hand, Tom's letter in the other. Truth, finally. But was it too late? The emergency room 314 smelled of industrial laundry soap, and that particular hospital smell, part disinfectant, part fear, part hope. Eleanor's eyes opened to water-stained ceiling tiles, one corner peeling like old wallpaper. The IV tube pulled at her hand when she tried to move, tape catching the thin skin that bruised if you looked at it wrong these days. Don't. Walter's voice, close enough she could smell his coffee breath. Folgers, not the expensive stuff. When had he switched? She turned her head on the flat hospital pillow that crinkled like a paper bag. He sat in the visitor's chair, pulled so close his knees pressed against the bed rail. Frost lay at his feet. Somebody had snuck a dog into Stanford Hospital, probably Marcus's doing. The husky's gray muzzle rested on crossed paws, one blue eye watching her, one brown eye watching Walter. How? Marcus brought him. Said Frost hadn't eaten in 3 days. Needed to see you. Walter poured water from a pink plastic pitcher, the kind hospitals had used since Eisenhower, held the bent straw to her lips. The water tasted like pipes, metallic and necessary. Grace? Downstairs with Arthur, having good morning, clear as a bell. The new medication finally balanced right. Eleanor tried to sit up. The room tilted like a boat in rough water. Walter's hand pressed her shoulder, gentle but firm, the way you'd hold something precious that might break. You collapsed at MediaCorp. 14-hour shift without eating. I need to get back. You're fired. She blinked. What? I called them, all 3 jobs. Told them you quit. Effective immediately. He pulled papers from his jacket, the same wrinkled suit from 3 days ago. She could tell by the coffee stain on the cuff. Also called your landlord. Paid the back rent and 3 months forward. You had no right. I had every right. You list me as emergency contact everywhere, at all 3 jobs, at the clinic, even at the library where you volunteer. His voice cracked. You trusted me to make decisions if you couldn't. So I decided. Eleanor's eyes burned, but nothing came. Dehydration had stolen even her tears. I don't want your money. Not money. Help. Different things. He pulled out more papers. The Whitman Harrison Foundation for Elder Care and Literacy. Joint directors, you and me. Salary for you, $70,000 a year. Enough to live on, take care of Grace, not kill yourself with work. That's charity. That's employment. Real job. You'd run literacy programs for seniors, manage the foundation's community outreach, things you already do for free, except now you'd get paid. Frost lifted his head, tail thumping once against the floor. A nurse walked past, saw the dog, kept walking. Some rules weren't worth enforcing. Samuel will never. Samuel's here. Eleanor looked toward the door. Samuel stood there, his daughter Madison beside him. The bruise around his eye had faded to yellow-green like old newspaper. Ms. Whitman? Eleanor said nothing. I was wrong. The words came out stilted, unpracticed.
About you. About everything. He pulled out a manila envelope, not the investigator's folder this time. Mother's letters. To Dad. About you. She thought you were special. Said you understood loneliness. Madison tugged his sleeve. Daddy, is this the grandma who reads stories? Samuel nodded. If she'll have us. Eleanor looked at the child, maybe 7, missing front teeth, wearing a Frozen t-shirt, though that movie was ancient history now. You want me to read to you? Grandpa says you do voices, different ones for each character. Your grandpa is... Eleanor stopped, looked at Walter. Your grandpa is right. The door opened wider. Grace stood there, supported by Arthur but standing on her own, eyes clear and focused. Eleanor? I'm here, Grace. I know. I remember. Grace moved into the room, slow but steady. Tom came to me in a dream, said to tell you something. Grace. He said love doesn't mean loss. Loss means you had love. Different things. Eleanor's composure cracked. Not tears, she had none left, but something deeper breaking open. Walter's hand found hers around the IV line. I know who you really are, he said quietly. Eleanor Whitman, fired librarian, night cleaner, sister, reader to the dying, mother who lost a daughter named Victoria. Eleanor's breath caught. And I know who you are, she whispered back. Walter Harrison, widower, workaholic, man who signs papers without looking, father who doesn't know how to love his son, millionaire who reads poetry in secret. Billionaire, Samuel corrected. Was billionaire. Was? Eleanor looked between them. Walter pulled out more papers. Liquidating everything. MediaCorp, the mansion, the investments, all going to the foundation. Keeping enough to live on, maybe $2 million, buy a regular house, live a regular life. That's insane. That's love, Grace said, clear as she'd been in years. What Tom would have done. What Catherine did do, in her way. A commotion in the hallway. Marcus appeared with 2 more dogs, a 3-legged pit bull and an ancient chihuahua with cataracts. Sorry, Mr. H. They wouldn't eat either. Needed to come. You brought 3 dogs to a hospital? Eleanor asked. 4, Marcus said. There's a golden retriever in the car, Sophie, 12 years old. Owner died last week. Walter looked at Eleanor. We'll need a bigger place for all the dogs. We? If you'll have me, the real me, not Arthur. If you'll have me, the real me, not Victoria. Madison climbed onto the hospital bed, careful of the IV line. Are you going to marry Grandpa? Madison, Samuel started forward. It's okay, Eleanor said. She looked at the child's earnest face. Maybe, if he asks right. Walter stood, then thought better of it, knelt beside the bed. His knees popped, 72-year-old joints on hard linoleum. Eleanor Whitman, will you marry Walter Harrison? The broke one, not the billionaire one. $2 million isn't broke, Grace pointed out. It is for him, Samuel said. Eleanor looked around the room, Grace clear-eyed for now. Samuel learning how to apologize. Madison needing a grandmother. Arthur smiling like he'd orchestrated this whole thing, which maybe he had. Marcus with his rescued dogs. Frost, tail wagging, knowing something good was happening. Yes, she said. The resolution. October 20th, Berkeley Courthouse, the small one on Alston Way. The morning fog had burned off, leaving that particular Bay Area light that made everything look like a movie from the 70s. Eleanor wore the navy dress, the Tuesday dress, mended so many times it was more thread than original fabric. Walter wore jeans from Target and a polo shirt Madison had picked out, bright green with a tiny alligator. Grace stood as witness, holding Frost's leash. The dog wore a bow tie someone, probably Marcus, had clipped to his collar. Behind them, Samuel held both his daughter's hands. The younger one, Sophia, had insisted on bringing flowers, carnations from Safeway, dyed unnatural blue, perfect in their imperfection. Arthur stood ready with his iPhone, which he held upside down half the time. Judge Martinez, who'd done 1,000 civil ceremonies, looked at the assembled group. Old people, children, dogs. "Do you, Walter Harrison, take Eleanor Whitman?" "Yes." "I need to finish the question, Mr. Harrison." "Sorry, but yes. To everything. Whatever you're going to say. Yes." Eleanor laughed, that sparrow sound Walter had fallen in love with over torn toast. "Do you, Eleanor Whitman, take Walter Harrison?" "The real one," Eleanor interrupted, "not the one I met online." "Is there another groom I should know about?" "We met through computer dating," Walter explained, both using fake names. "Arthur Brennan and Victoria Ashford," Grace added helpfully. Judge Martinez set down her papers. "Should I be concerned?" "We were both lying," Eleanor said, "pretending to be people we weren't. But we fell in love with who we really were," Walter added. "How did you know what was real?" Madison piped up. "Grandpa says real is what's left when you run out of money." $2 million isn't exactly broke," the judge said. "It is for him," Samuel said. "He gave away $8 billion. The judge looked between them. "For love?" "For truth," Walter said. "Same thing," Eleanor said. Judge Martinez smiled. "Then by the power vested in me by the state of California, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss whoever you think each other is." Walter cupped Eleanor's face, hands gentle on skin that had seen too much sun, too much sorrow, too much life. "Hello, Eleanor Harrison." "Hello, Walter Harrison. The real one." They kissed. Frost barked. The other dogs, they'd snuck all 4 in, joined the chorus. Madison and Sophia giggled. Arthur's phone captured the ceiling as he fumbled it. Outside, they walked to Romano's cafe. Not the Bluebird, that was for lies. Romano's was for truth. $3 eggs and coffee that tasted like coffee, not ambition. "What now?" Eleanor asked, not tearing her toast, just biting it like regular people did. "Now we figure out how to live on $2 million. That's still a lot of money. Not after we buy the house." "What house?" Walter pulled out a real estate listing. 3 bedrooms in Berkeley, 70 years old, needed work. Backyard big enough for dogs. "This one, if you like it." Eleanor looked at the price. "That's half your money right there." "Our money. And yes, Bay Area prices." "The foundation?" "Samuel's handling it. Turns out he's good at giving money away. Learned from his mother." Through the window, October light made everything golden. Somewhere the dogs were barking in Marcus's van. Somewhere Grace was having a clear day. Somewhere Catherine and Tom were watching, satisfied. "I want to go see the house," Eleanor said, "after Grace's appointment." "She's doing better. The generic medication, who would have thought?" "Sometimes the expensive answer isn't the right answer." Madison climbed onto Eleanor's lap. "Grandma, will you read to us tonight?" "Every night if you want." "With voices?" "All different voices." "Grandpa says you're the best reader in the world." "Your grandpa is biased." "What's biased mean?" Walter laughed. "It means I love her too much to be objective." "What's objective mean?" "Seeing things as they really are." "But you didn't," Sophia pointed out. "You both pretended." "We weren't pretending," Eleanor said. "We were just afraid." "Of what?" Eleanor and Walter looked at each other. How to explain being afraid that nobody could love the real you, the broken you, the poor you, the old you? "Doesn't matter now," Walter said. They drove to the house. It sat on a corner lot, lemon tree in front, roses that needed pruning. The porch sagged slightly. paint peeled on the shutters. Perfect. We'll take it, Walter told the realtor. You haven't seen inside. Don't need to. That night, in their residential hotel room, the kind that rented by the week, had a hot plate, came with sheets, Eleanor read to Madison and Sophia. Frost lay at her feet. The other dogs surrounded them like a fortress of fur. Walter watched from the doorway. His wife, reading with voices, making his granddaughters laugh. His phone buzzed.
The board, probably, or his lawyer, or someone wanting something. He turned it off.
And they lived happily ever after, Eleanor finished. That's not realistic, Madison said. You're right, Eleanor said. How about, and they lived? That's all? That's everything, Walter said. And it was. My dear friend, I told you this story because at 82, I've learned we're all imposters in some way. Walter and Eleanor weren't unique in their deception. They were just honest about it eventually. Every Tuesday, in coffee shops across America, we sit, pretending our lives are more together than they are. We hide our poverty, our loneliness, our desperate need behind careful masks. But here's what 30 years of volunteering at Stanford Hospital taught me. Love sees through every disguise. It doesn't care about your checking account or your fake profile.
The miracle isn't that two lonely people found each other through lies. It's that the lies led them to truth.
And maybe that's what we're all doing, lying our way to honesty, pretending our way to authenticity, faking it until we become real. At our age, we've earned the right to drop the act. But first, we need someone to see through it. This story was inspired by conversations with seniors at Stanford Hospital's reading program, created solely for entertainment purposes. This work does not condone, encourage, or promote deception, violence, or harmful behavior of any kind. All characters and events depicted are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The story aims to explore themes of loneliness and connection in later life.